We want to take you to Andrew Scheer now, who is speaking regarding the new trade deal. Let's listen.
With the United States and Mexico will affect their lives.
Conservatives, like all Canadians, would hope that the new trade agreement would be good for the Canadian economy. But Justin Trudeau and the Liberals said that any deal was better than no deal.
He has signed and will hold him to account for his concessions. However, it is already clear that there have been a number of cases where Justin Trudeau has backed down. First of all, he has backed down on Trump's timeline and signed an agreement without assurances that current destructive tariffs on steel, aluminum, and softwood lumber will be lifted. On steel and aluminum, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross has already said that there is, quote, no timeline for when these tariffs might be lifted. President Trump is musing that quotas might replace his tariffs. On automotives, Canadian exports for both autos and auto parts are now capped, a provision that didn't exist before and one that could pose major problems for manufacturers years down the road. In effect, Justin Trudeau has surrendered control over the future of Canada's auto industry to Donald Trump. Sur le plan de la gestion de l'offre,
as for supply management, Justin Trudeau has made unprecedented concessions that will create fear and anxiety in our dairy industry and will threaten our rural communities. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have gained on cultural exceptions, but although these are important disposals, they were already implemented before Justin Trudeau offered
Justin
to sign
Trudeau is trying to
the
claim
agreement.
credit for things conservative governments had already locked down. And if we are to judge this by Trudeau's own stated objectives when negotiations began, the USMCA falls well short of that. He wanted an end to Buy American provisions on government procurement so Canadian firms could win cross-border contracts. He failed. He wanted to make it easier for Canadian professionals to work in the United States and Mexico. He failed. Ultimately, the USMCA will be judged on how Canada benefits. We will evaluate what Canada gave up versus what it got in return. Under this deal, Trudeau backed down on protecting Canada's dairy farmers. He backed down on Canadian control on our auto industry. He backed down on Canadian sovereignty on setting prescription drug prices for Canadians. Il a fait marche arrière sur un meilleur accès des entreprises canadiennes
on access of Canadian business
américain.
With American government. He backed down on extending copyright. He backed down on the steel and aluminum markets.
More expensive pharmaceuticals. No end to tariffs on steel, aluminum. No end to tariffs on softwood lumber. No end to the Buy American policy. We must remember that it was Justin Trudeau who volunteered to renegotiate NAFTA in the first place. C'est lui qui a dit
he was the one who said that Donald Trump was more than happy to review the agreement in order to improve it.
He was happy to renegotiate NAFTA to get an improved deal. That is the bar that he has set for himself. So the question is the USMCA an improvement on NAFTA? The answer at this stage, and by almost every measure, appears to be no. Conservatives will hold Justin Trudeau to account for every single line of this agreement. Et nous n'allons pas le laisser sans sortir avec un mauvais accord.
We'll not let him get away with a bad agreement. Thank you.
A better question is, how did Justin Trudeau allow himself to be put in this position where that is the only deal? Conservatives wanted a good deal, one where we gained access to the to the U.S. markets, one where we saw an end to destructive tariffs on things like steel and aluminum and softwood lumber. Today, the United States is measuring their success in terms of what they got, and Canada is measuring their success by measuring what they didn't have to give up. So it's pretty clear on which end of the stick we're on.
So what would you have done? What would you have done differently? To
I would have signed a better deal.
How would you have gotten a better deal? Would you have waited past the deadline? Would you have changed anything in what you were willing to give up?
It's Justin Trudeau that has to explain how he found himself in this position where Mexico and the United States signed major parts of this agreement without him. Justin Trudeau has to explain why he started off the negotiations focused on politically correct posturing instead of fighting for market access and a reduction in tariffs. There are many decision points all along the way that led us to this decision, and now Canadians, I would have focused on economic issues. I would have focused on making sure that we saw an end to softwood lumber tariffs, an end to steel and aluminum tariffs, not focused on politically correct posturing things that he did. I would have made decisions here at home that strengthen our position. Having a more competitive economy means that you've got more voices in the United States fighting to get their money into Canada, fighting for jobs and for investment in Canada. Those are the types of things that would have strengthened our position at the table. Now, Justin Trudeau has to explain how we have a worse deal than NAFTA.
If this is a bad deal, are you saying you wouldn't have signed it?
Look, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to renegotiate these things. This is the deal that Justin Trudeau was able to get. I think, again, a better question is, how did Justin Trudeau find himself in this position? But the question is, the question is
right now, would you have rejected the deal that's on the table?
The question is, would a Conservative government have been able to get a better deal? And when you look at the Conservative record on free trade deals, every single time, from NAFTA to CPP, to CETA to TPP, to the dozens of trade deals we signed during the last 10 years of a Conservative government, we measured our successes in what we gained, what we got new access to. This deal, this government is bragging about not losing things. The only thing that they could point to during question period today as a success was Chapter 19, the dispute resolution mechanism that we've already had, that Conservatives already locked in. So again, I would have got to a place where we had a good deal.
So you wouldn't have signed this deal?
I would have got to the place where we had a good deal. This idea that Justin Trudeau can manage the negotiations in such a way that this is the deal that brings back, and then the question is, would you sign this or not? I take a more holistic view of it, and Canada should have concentrated on economic issues. We should have fought to keep jobs and investment here in Canada instead of raising taxes and chasing it away. That would have strengthened our position at the negotiations.
I'd like to know, when Trudeau says that he had to make concessions to preserve the system as it is, even former Prime Minister Ryan Mulroney said you have to make concessions to come to an agreement. So why do you say that this is wrong? In situations where the Canadian government has made agreements that have affected supply management, the Conservatives, we made gains. Where are the gains here with concessions on the supply management?
Decide whether or not they want to sign on for another 16 years. If your government wins, what would you do? Would you say you want another 16 years, or would you be in a position in 6 years' time to say we want to start renegotiating?
Obviously, that's a hypothetical question for 6 years down the line. What I would say is Conservatives will always work very hard to gain new market access and to tear down tariffs that are on Canadian industries that affect Canadian jobs. We had that under NAFTA. The Conservative legacy on free trade with the United States was a strong deal that gave us unparalleled, privileged access to the U.S. economy. And the deal we have today sees much of that eroded.
Let's talk about business having already left Canada because of the uncertainty and some of the tariffs in the U.S. changing the taxes. What would you do now as concrete steps to sort of bring that business back to Canada?
Well, we will be articulating in the next few days and weeks what we would like to see in a fall economic update. There's no question that Canada has to be conscious of the fact that investment decisions are being made very quickly. When investors around the world look at Canada with higher taxes, with a regulatory regime that makes it virtually impossible to get big projects built, when you look at the flight of capital in our energy sector, when you look at the imbalance between U.S. investment in Canada versus Canadian investment in the U.S., which has shifted much in the U.S.'s favor, obviously we need to take some steps to repatriate that investment. Thank you very much. I actually have to run upstairs for a briefing, but appreciate your questions today. Thank you.